Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this presentation of the Legacy of Libraries in Montesano. My name is Megan Valentine. I am the current president of the Friends of the W.H. Abel Memorial Library. Today, I am looking forward to telling you about the history of Montesano's support of public libraries and how it has influenced the growth of libraries throughout Southwest Washington. In 1886, the first library opened to the public in Montesano. This reading room was opened by the Women's Christian Temperance Union. Montesano had only been a city for 3 years, but the county seat had been located here since 1860. Montesano had a population of approximately 1,500 people. Montesano was actually the second largest city in the county, second to Aberdeen by a difference of 6 people. It's not exactly clear where the first Women's Christian Temperance Union reading room was located, but as you can see from this notice in the paper, it was returned to its old quarters over the bakery. So it seems likely that that first reading room was located in the bakery. As you can see from this historical map from 1903, the bakery was located on Main Street, very near where the current W.H. Abel Memorial Library is located. Books were acquired through donations and book showers, which social clubs and groups would hold to gather books to be added to the reading room. The city of Montesano decided that it needed to get a public library instead of a private reading room that was open to the public in 1916. As you can see from the minutes from the city council meetings, the library asked the city asked the clerk to write a resolution for the library in February, and on March 7th, 1916, it was moved, seconded, and passed that the city of Montesano would establish a public library. Shortly thereafter, on March 14, 1916, the first city library board was formed. The president of the library board was W.H. Abel. W.H. Abel, William Horatio Abel, was born in Sussex, England. He immigrated to Kansas as a child and moved to Montesano in 1892. W.H. Abel spent his life in Montesano and worked as a local attorney, in which he was very well known for his amazing personal library, which was kept in his home, the Abel House. The Abel House, still present in Montesano today, is located on the corner of Fleet and Broadway. Abel had the house built in 1908. At one point, W.H. Abel's personal library, located in his home, was said to contain 15,000 books. Once W.H. Abel was president of the library board, they had to figure out how to make a public library. They approved the name, the Montesano Public Library, and moved to establish a library in a physical location. However, the city did not really provide funds for the library. There are a lot of notes in council meetings and discussions about the library not being able to pay its bills. That finally changed in 1921, when the Montesano citizens approved a tax to pay for their library. However, many of the books in the library were still donated by local citizens, including W.H. Abel. Despite the discussions about not having enough money to pay their bills, between 1916 and 1921, there must have been some funding, as the city did hire a librarian, Etta McNeil. She moved to Montesano in 1916 to fill the post a librarian for the Montesano Public Library. As Grace Harbor County grew and more people immigrated to Grace Harbor County, some moved into cities, but others lived in unincorporated areas. Those unincorporated areas were governed by the county, but the county did not have the ability to build a library. The state library tried to resolve this by passing a law allowing for rural library districts in 1933. That law was found to be unconstitutional, so the legislature tried again in 1941. This law allowed Grace Harbor County to form a rural library district. But in order to do that, the county first had to participate in a library demonstration. Essentially, this was a trial run to see if a library district could be sustained. Finally, in 1942, the voters in the unincorporated areas of Grace Harbor approved the Grace Harbor County Rural Library District, and Grace Harbor became one of the first rural library districts in the state of Washington. At this time, the population of Montesano was approximately 2,000 people. The population of the unincorporated areas of Grace Harbor was approximately 14,000 people. Because Montesano was the county seat, the city of Montesano and Grace Harbor County decided to team together, and the City of Montesano Library became the central library for the Grace Harbor County Rural Library. In this way, this became one of the first non-city-run libraries in Washington state. Rural library districts were a significant departure from the traditional library model, where taxpayer dollars were used to build a large, beautiful building where people would go to the library to select books to read. Instead, the rural library district was designed to maximize the distribution of books over a large geographic area by using taxpayer dollars to purchase a collection of books, but to then distribute those books to as many smaller communities as possible to minimize the time that people had to travel to access their library, while maximizing the selection of materials they could get in their small community-run library. To make sure that Grace Harbor had enough books, they borrowed books from Aberdeen and Hoquiam City libraries, as well as the University of Washington. Books also continued to be donated by local community members, including W.H. Abel. He donated 169 books, mostly nonfiction. To distribute these books to the unincorporated communities, the county librarian contacted the rural communities to find locations for their local library branches. The combining of resources for a rural library district allowed the library to purchase more books as well and provide those books in the way that they were needed by the local communities. An example of this is providing books in other languages. The library paid attention to different communities growing through immigration and would stock their local community library with books in the native languages of the people that were living there, as well as in English. At this time, Grace Harbor County's librarian was Helen Gilbert, and she really deserves a lot of praise for the work she did to keep the Grace Harbor County Library going when it opened. It was during World War II, and there were a lot of resources that were very hard to come by. Ms. Gilbert used her own ration gas and vehicle to transport books to the local community libraries for many years. Ultimately, the Grace Harbor County Rural Library was a success. At its peak, Grace Harbor had 33 community libraries in its rural library district. Again, it would be social clubs and groups that sometimes provided space and would be the librarian in these small community libraries. Some locations were in private homes. Others would be located in the general store in that community. In 1946, the Grays Harbor Rural Library District expanded its reach again and signed an agreement with the Pacific County Rural Library District. This allowed them to share their book collections. This is also when the City of Montesano Public Library and Grays Harbor Rural Library headquarters combined into one location, and that was in the corner of Montesano's City Hall. The City of Montesano and the Grays Harbor County Rural Library District remained in this location, Montesano City Hall, until they moved into their current location, the current W.H. Abel Memorial Library. In addition to getting books to small community libraries, the Grays Harbor County Rural Library District used bookmobiles to get books to the unincorporated rural areas. This expansion of the area served had an expansion in the area of service. There was a lot of publicity about the bookmobile, and the bookmobile was embraced by the community. The bookmobile traveled throughout 2 counties, stopping in rural communities, logging camps, and schools. You can see pictured on this a schedule of locations, dates, and times for the bookmobiles G1, G2, and G3, and the wide variety of places that they would go. Pictured here is a drawing made by Barbara Fry in the 2nd grade in Montesano in 1947. As you can see, her teacher was Mrs. Dorothy Sundstrom, and this is a picture of her 2nd grade class and the bookmobile for the Grays Harbor County Rural Library. Bookmobiles were used throughout Washington state at this time and for decades to expand the population served by libraries. Bookmobiles expanded the service to 56% to 90% of the community. Timberland Library retired its last bookmobiles in 1991. Pictured here is one of the retired bookmobiles, currently located in Neilton, Washington. Something interesting to note is the library bookmobile has the phone number for the library in Montesano, and that is the phone number for the library still. But there is some exciting news. Very recently, Timberland decided to bring back the bookmobile, so we'll be watching for that in the future. As the Grays Harbor County Rural Library District expanded, the citizens of Montesano poured their support into their city library through donations, bequests, and countless volunteer hours. Truly, it wasn't possible to distinguish the Montesano Public Library from the Grays Harbor County Library from the outside, because they shared the same space and their books were combined. But for decades, gifts have been made specifically to the Montesano Library by past and current community members. W.H. Abel passed away in 1948. At that time, not much remained of his personal library, although a large part of his law library was gifted to Grays Harbor County for their law library when he passed. The first city librarian, Etta McNeil, passed away in 1954. In memory of Etta, a picture, Fairy Tales by Walter Ferrell, was donated to the Montesano Library in Etta's memory. It still hangs there today. But the biggest bequeath came from Helen Moore. She passed away in 1956. Helen Moore was one of the daughters of W.H. Abel. W.H. Abel's wife, Ms. Moore, passed away in a tragic car accident in 1956. Much to the surprise of the community, when Ms. Moore's will was read, it left $70,000 to the city of Montesano, quote, to be used by the governing officials of the city of Montesano as they determine proper for memorial to my deceased father, William H. Abel. The memorial gift from Helen Abel came around the time the Grays Harbor County was discussing moving the county library headquarters to Aberdeen due to their need for more space in the larger population of Aberdeen. The population of Montesano was approximately 2,400, while the population of Aberdeen was approximately 19,000. When the city of Montesano considered what to do with the gift left by Helen Abel Moore for a suitable memorial for her father, the city ultimately decided whatever they did needed to meet three goals. 1, keep with the life and character of W.H. Abel. 2, have maximum public usefulness. And 3, not create difficult problems of maintenance, operation, and management involving possibly heavy future costs. The projects considered included a new library, a swimming pool, a youth center, a Grays Harbor Museum, and a scholarship fund. Ultimately, with the support of the Abel family, the city decided the best use of the gift was a memorial library. And the Grays Harbor Rural Library Board decided to keep their headquarters in Montesano. And so, the W.H. Abel Memorial Library was built. It was dedicated on September 9th, 1960, 60 years ago, and the City of Montesano Public Library and Grays Harbor Rural Library moved into their new location, where they are still located today, under new management, of course. The new location for the W.H. Abel Memorial Library was secured on Main Street in the location of the former livery and stable. As you can see from that same map from 1903, it's very close to the location of the original reading room library that started the legacy of libraries in Montesano. The library was built using the donation from Helen Abel. That donation was given by the city to Grays Harbor County for the purpose of building the memorial library. The county contributed an additional $40,000 to complete the construction project, which was done using mostly local businesses. The construction of the library received a great deal of attention in Montesano and beyond. The September 8th, 1960 issue of the Vidette dedicated a significant amount of the newspaper to stories about the new library and included this quote from the state governor. The library in itself is an appropriate memorial to the late W.H. Abel and to Mr. Abel's lifelong devotion to books and learning. The new library building and library district headquarters even received a letter from the White House applauding the decision to build a library. Local businesses put ads in the Vidette congratulating the library on their opening. But the W.H. Abel Library did not happen just because there was funding. It happened because the people and businesses of Montesano believed that libraries matter. They wanted a library that would provide adequate size for years of growth, would be part of one of the largest organizations, a library organization for Grays Harbor County, and would provide a space where children and adults could enjoy the inspiration of books and find an endless fountain of knowledge, culture, and sheer pleasure in reading. Once the library opened, Montesano continued to show its support for its local library through more donations. The Montesano VFW donated and installed the flagpole and flag that are still in front of the library today. Local artists displayed their work in the library, and many murals by local artists can be found inside the Memorial Library. Some traveling art exhibits were also brought in to be viewed at the library. Growth continued, and in 1964, other rural library districts in Thurston, Mason, and Pacific counties joined with Grays Harbor Rural Library District and Lewis County to try and form the Timberland Regional Rural Library District. The districts worked together for 2 years doing a library demonstration, much like happened in the 1940s in Grays Harbor, to show that the rural library district could be sustained. After the demonstration and much campaigning, the Timberland Regional Library District was finally put before the voters in 1968. The Montesano Library Board put a lot of time and energy into getting the word out to voters. They called them and encouraged them to support the Timberland Library District. Ultimately, in 1968, the library district passed with the highest percentage of passage in Grays Harbor County. When it was created, the Timberland District provided library service to approximately 200,000 people. Approximately 60,000 of those were in Grays Harbor County. And with the formation of the Timberland Regional Library District, the W.H. Abel Memorial Library became Timberland's first library. When the Grays Harbor County Rural Library District ceased to exist and the Timberland Regional Rural Library District commenced, the headquarters for the library district became located in Thurston County, where the headquarters had been for the Thurston County Library District. But the W.H. Abel Memorial Library remained a part of that library system and their first building for a library. Today, Timberland Regional Rural Library District serves approximately 500,000 people with 35 libraries. Its service center is located in Tumwater. Grays Harbor only has a population of approximately 74,000 people, and Montesano has a population of approximately 4,000 people. But as you can see from this chart, the Timberland Regional Library District has allowed what started as a library to serve a few thousand people, ultimately to grow to be part of a legacy of providing library access to 500,000 people and counting. Here's a snapshot of Montesano Library's use in 2019. Keep in mind, we were closed for part of 2019 due to flooding and repairs, but for a city with a population of 4,000, we have over 8,000 people that rely on our library as their primary library. We have 2,000 active library card users, and we borrowed nearly 55,000 items from the library last year. Montesano is a small and vibrant city, and our library and Timberland appreciate the support they get from our community. As we celebrate 60 years since the opening of the W.H. Abel Memorial Library, I appreciate the time each of you have taken today to look back and learn about how we got where we are. I hope I'll see you at the library soon, but until then, take advantage of the amazing programs Timberland is offering, such as library book takeout, grab bags, free Wi-Fi outside the building, free printing, and lots of information on their website to help patrons during these unusual times. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.